Hi everyone, welcome to ADF step-by-step tutorials. Today what we are going to see is we are going to have two bounded task flows, and then we are going to see how one bounded task flow can invoke another bounded task flow, and once you invoke the another bounded task flow, how can you come back to the original bounded task flow. So basically, for navigating from one bounded task flow to the another bounded task flow, we'll be using the task flow call activity. For returning from the original, like from the navigated task flow back to the original task flow, we will be using the task flow return activity. So let's take a simple scenario where assume that in the screen the task flow 1 is the employee list task flow. In the employee list task flow, say suppose we have a view named employee list view, which displays the list of employees. And say suppose we have another task flow named as employee create task flow, which basically does the functionality of creating a new employee. Assume that like a user has a button named create in the employee list task flow. When the user clicks on create, we should navigate to the employee create task flow, and then the employee create view should be displayed. Once the user is done with creating the employee, the user can click on save or cancel. On successful save or cancel, the user should be navigated back to the original calling task flow. In this case, it's the employee list task flow. Let's go ahead and then create the sample. So I have a project created. I have an application created where like a basic application that I have created. So now what I'm going to do, I'm going to create a bounded task flow with page fragments. So I go to JSF, select ADF Taskflow. Here I'm going to say employee list TF. So I'm going to create it as a bounded task flow with page fragments. Inside this employee list TF, I'm going to have a view which I'm going to call it as employee list view. So let me just go ahead and create this view. So in the employee list view, I'm not really using anything from the ADF model layer. So I'm just going to have a simple panel header. I'm going to set the title as employee list. So basically you will have the entire employee list displayed here. The next thing what I'm going to do is I'm going to create one more bounded task flow, which I'm going to call it as employee create TF. Inside this employee create TF, I'm going to create a view which is called as employee create view. Inside it, I'm going to have a panel header, and I'm going to display the title as create new employee. Okay. And then assume that like we have a form where the user can feed in all the details. So I'm going to have a very simple form. I'm going to have a couple of input text. So I'm going to say so I'll ensure that it's created in the appropriate place. So the first one I'm just going to call it as employee name. The second one that I'm going to call it as employee ID. Okay. Assume that the user can provide the employee name and the employee ID. Once the user feeds in these values, I'm just going to make them as required. I'm going to have two buttons. So I'm going to call them as save and cancel. So now we have created the employee list task flow, and also we have created the employee create task flow. So now let me go back to the employee list view. So here I'm going to have one more button which I'm going to call it as create. When the user clicks on create, what we want is we want the user to navigate to the employee create task flow where he can do the create functionality, and then once he is done with like entering the required records, once he clicks on save and cancel, he should return back to the original invoking view, which is nothing but the employee list view. So let's see how we can do this. First thing is, right, we have an employee list view. From employee list view, we should navigate to employee create TF task flow. So I'm just going to drag and drop this. So once you drag and drop this, this is going to be created as a task flow call activity. The task flow call activity is used to invoke another task flow. So I'm going to define the navigation rule here. I'm going to define the navigation rule as to create. And then in the create button, I'm going to use this navigation rule. Okay. So basically what will happen is when I click on create, so basically the action is to create is invoked, which will invoke the task flow call activity and which will navigate us to the employee create task flow. If you come to the employee create task flow, you'll see that the employee create view is the default activity. And inside this, we have save and cancel. Now, once the user clicks on save or cancel, we should go back to the original calling task flow. So the original calling task flow is employee list TF, and we want to return back to the employee list view, which is in employee list TF. In order to do that, we use the task flow return activity. So I'm just going to have like two task flow return activity. So I'm going to call this as save task flow return, and I'm going to have one more activity which I'm going to call it as cancel task flow return, and I'm going to define the navigations between them. To save, and this one will be called as to cancel. So let me just like align them properly. So if you see here from the employee create view, I can go to either like a save task flow return or the cancel task flow return. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to use them in the buttons that we have created. So on save, I'm going to use the action which takes me to the save task flow return. Similarly for the cancel, I'm going to use to cancel task flow return. To cancel like a navigation rule which will take me to the cancel task flow return. I save everything. Now let me just go ahead and create a test page. So in this test page, I'm going to create a panel header. So let me just so this is a simple like a test page.jspx where I'm going to drag and drop this employee list TF as a region. So let me save everything and then run the page. So if you see here, the test page got loaded. In the test page, we have the employee list task flow, which is been dragged and dropped as an region. So now I have the create button. The moment the user clicks on create button, it navigates to the create new employee view, which is available in create employee task flow. Basically, since it is using the task flow call activity, it is being able to navigate from one task flow to the another. So here, let me just like feed in the values. I'm just going to say provide the values. I'm going to say George 12. So I'm just going to give the employee ID as 12. Now the moment I click on save, I need to go back to the original calling task flow. I click on save, it takes me to the original calling task flow, which is in this case the employee list. Similarly, I go to create. Say suppose I have provided a name like say Rahul, and then I provided the value as like say the employee ID as 11. So I don't want to save it. I just want to cancel it. Even on cancel, it takes me back to the employee list page. So basically, if you see here, we have used two important task flow components. One is the task flow call activity, which helps us to navigate from one task flow to the another. And then the second thing what we have used is the task flow return activity, which basically returns us to the original calling task flow. I hope it helped you to understand what is like a task flow call and then the task flow return activity. Please let me know if you have any questions. Thank you.